Hey guys, Andre here. If you watched my last video, you watched me mixing with stock plugins in Cubase. And so for this video, and because some of you asked me, I mixed the same song, but this time in Logic with the stock plugin, which by the way, you can download the project in the link in the description. Now, before I show you how it's sounding and compare it with the Cubase mix, let me just tell you this. What I really like about making these kind of videos is that I always learn a lot. Now, I have used in the past a lot of the stock plugins in Logic, but when I put myself in a position that I really need to nail a mix just with stock plugins, it's a whole different game. Now, some plugins in Logic are really good, some others. But let me show you how it's sounding, and I'll be jumping between this mix and the Cubase one. Let's go! You know what, at this point, I don't know which one sounds best. I'm sick and tired of mixing this song for these videos, to be honest. Now, being more serious, I really like how it came out. It sounds really good. And just like in Cubase, I think that what I miss the most is, again, tape emulations, console emulations. I think it's missing some analog character. But to be totally honest with you, I never thought that I could reach this kind of result just with the stock plugins. Anyway, let me show you really quick what I did here. And so let's just start from the 2-bus, and I'm using EQ as per usual and compressor. Now, here's what I learned about the stock compressors in Logic. You need to be really careful with your gain staging, because if you hit the compressor really hard, or it's not really hard, if you hit it hard, it will fart. It will sound really bad. And so what I did here when I first saw that it was sounding really bad was that I lowered the volume of all the tracks with the clip gain function, minus 6.3 dBs. But this was not enough, and I had to select them all and normalize the gain. Functions, normalize vision gain, and I think it was minus 26 dBs LUFS, because I wanted to have more headroom so I could mix without worrying about the gain staging. And so about the stock compressors, if you're familiar with the stock plugins in Logic, you know there's 7 of them, and I tried them all. I'm not sure which model they are emulating. I know this one is probably the SSL bus compressor, but the top 3 for me was the Vintage VCA, the Studio VCA, and not the Studio Fat was the top 3 for me. Now, this is kind of embarrassing because although I have used this in the past, this compressor, I didn't know about the sidechain. And I couldn't remember that it had a limiter and distortion built in, and the mix knob. The mix knob is really cool too. So there's a lot of features just in one single plugin. It's amazing. And so on my 2-bus, I'm using an EQ and the compressor, and I start my mixes with them turned on. Usually I use this plugin, the Virtual Mix Rack, and God, I miss this one so much in this mix. The Virtual Mix Bus adds compression, saturation. It's just such a great plugin. And so with the compressor, I'm using the sidechain, high pass at 80 Hz, because I don't want the kick drum to trigger really hard the compressor. Now let me show you my drums, and here's how it's sounding. It sounds really good, man, especially considering that I'm using stock plugins. So let me show you the snare drum. So here's the snare drum without any processing. So I'm using an expander to get rid of the bleed. Then an EQ. So attenuating the honkiness of the snare drum, boosting it at 8K, boosting at 2.5K, and boosting the fundamental. The compressor, I tried this Vintage VCA and the Studio VCA. I liked a lot both of them. But I ended up with the Vintage VCA. And so let me show you how it sounds. And here I'm using this distortion knob in the clip mode. Usually on snares I use a saturation plugin because I want to shave off the initial transient. And I find that this distortion knob actually sounds really good. Let me show you the 3 modes. It sounds really good. Now I have this plugin here just because I didn't want to forget to show you, which I think it sounds really good. So if I turn off the distortion knob here, let me show you how it sounds. Sounds really good. Okay, then I send it to the parallel compressor, which is this one, and it sounds like this. Actually, let me show you how the whole drum sounds. Sounds really good. And then I send it to the reverb, which is a Space Designer. I'm not sure what I tweaked here, I can't remember, but I know that I EQ it. So let me show you. Now the kick drum. So here's what I use here, well, an EQ to get rid of the usual frequencies. And here's how it sounds without and with. And I use a compressor, and this time I use the Studio VCA. So let me show you. And then I tried this plugin. What I was looking for when I reached out to this plugin, well, I tried more, but I ended up with this one. I wanted more low end and to reduce the impact, the clickness of the kick. And this clip distortion rounded up the kick sound. And then I send it to the parallel compressor. And then for all the other channels of my drums, I basically use the channel EQ and a compressor. Because the compressor has so many features, I didn't feel the need of using any other plugin. I guess what I want to say is that the stock compressor in Logic is a really good plugin. Much better than most of the third-party plugins, if you ask me. Now let me show you this on guitars, because I knew that these plugins existed in Logic, but I never really tried it. And I'm really happy, and I can see myself using them all the time. So let me show you how the guitars were sounding without processing. So the first one was the channel EQ for high pass and low pass. And then comes the surprise. I should be using these plugins for a long time. Both of them have this drive knob, and I can tell that it sounds really good. So let me show you what I did here. So this one is boosting the mid-range, and let me show you this, because this is really cool. So you can hear a boost in the high mids, and I'm not boosting the mid range. I'm boosting the low end, and everything else is from this drive knob. Let me show you what it does. So if you want something to cut, like guitars, like vocals, you just need to use this drive knob. It sounds so good, man. It's incredible. Then I use the multipressor for the palm mutes, and then the direction mixer, so I could spread out a little bit the guitars. And when it comes to the mix itself, that's pretty much all the plugins I use. Channel EQ, the compressors, and these two and vintage console EQs. On my master bus, because I wanted to make it as loud as my Cubase one, which is really loud, I use the vintage tube EQ to get a little bit more low end. And as I said before, I use the drive knob. And then comes the limiters. Now I can say that I don't like it a lot, both limiters, I think they are 2. But if I compare this one with the 5 filter Pro L2, the Pro L2 gives me a more open sounding mix. And although this limiter is pretty much smashing the mix, I think that the Pro L2 preserves better the dynamics of the mix. And to wrap up this video, I have to say that I'm really happy I made both these videos with Cubase and Logic, because I'm really happy to say that we can get Pro mix is just using the stock plugins. Now there's plugins for specific things that doesn't exist both in Logic and Cubase, but regardless, I'm 100% sure that you can craft a really good mix just using the stock plugins. And that's all for this video. I'll let the music play to the end, and I hope to see you in the next video. Cheers!